crafters, Raquel here from Paints and Glitter, coming along with Paper Rose Studio today. I'm sharing with you the newest Christmas collection called Fairytale Christmas. It's absolutely darling. I've got some 12 by 12 papers I'm going to show you. Also some 6 by 6 papers. I've taken them out of the wrapper, of course, just to make it easier. And then I'll also be working with this set of dies, and they're so pretty. This is called Snowflake Trio Metal Die, and aptly named. Of course, you get 3 different shapes of snowflakes there. I thought it would be really pretty for winter projects. I just love those shapes, and I'm going to share with you these papers because they're so cute. Starting with the 6 by 6 here, these are printed on 200 GSM card. They're 18 double-sided pattern papers, and you get 3 each of 12 designs. So I'm just very quickly going to run through them. You get some sentiments, some really darling little images, some scenery, and these are cut aparts, of course, that you can use for card bases, tags, layering, whatever you like. This one has a little scene here with a collection of snowmen, reindeer, and beautiful Christmas trees with pink bows. So this is quite shabby chic is what I would call this collection. Here is a pink reindeer with a beautiful little bell there, and it's hinting at having gold designs all throughout, or decorations. Then there's the poinsettias, a beautiful bell that it's looking at here, and then the background is that nice cream color with musical sheet and little sentiments of Christmas there. And the back of that has a collection of bells with teal bows. Super pretty. Here's another cut apart sheet. This one includes a little polar bear, a bird, a little fairy touching a Christmas tree, a little cottage there covered in snow, and then the poinsettias here that are absolutely gorgeous. And then of course some of these have sentiments, so you can definitely use those in lieu of other sentiments that you might have. But here the back of that one has little Christmas presents, and there is a slight sheen to these papers, just to let you know, even though they don't have glitter or that sort of thing, but you can definitely alter them, as I do often. This one is a beautiful wreath, and it has 3 little birds, and then the background has musical sheets, and it's blue. It also has little birds in the background, and it also has little greenery and the poinsettias. Another cut apart sheet. It includes a little owl, a reindeer, a little girl hugging a bunny, this darling little soldier down here. It's just super cutesy. And then the little mushroom houses and some sentiments, Christmas lights, and the little baubles down here are absolutely gorgeous. The background here has the nutcracker and the little soldier images all throughout. This one has the poinsettias with a hint of gold in the leaves. It has this background here with the pinks, and it has that garland, but it's pink on pink, and then it has the little toadstool houses with 2 little birds and little hearts. Very romantic and sweet. I think this would be great for Valentine's Day, by the way. It doesn't have to be Christmas. And then here's the repetition of that, because you do get 3 of each, so that you can have a lot of fun with that. Moving on to the 12 by 12 papers. These are 12 double-sided pattern papers, 2 each of 12 designs, and as you can tell, there's a super cute little fairies throughout. But let me show you the back of the cover. And this is where you're going to often find the sentiments that are included in the paper pack. The paper packs from Paper Rose do vary depending on the title that you have here. So be sure to take a look at that, because this one says basics, for instance, and that's what you'll find here. But there may be others included in this collection, so I invite you to take a peek with my links so you can see what else is available. But then again, here are those darling sentiments. You can use them throughout the year, or of course you get your Merry Christmas, Christmas wishes. So very sweet, and I like that they include different colors. This one has the little snowmen and also the snow globes with a little village inside. This time different because they're not the little mushroom houses, but super sweet nonetheless. First sheet has these darling fairies. They all are so very sweet. The colors are really darling and of course very innocent looking. These are Fairytale Christmas Basics A, so if you choose to, you can definitely purchase a 24 pack of any of the ones that you see have a letter. So that way, if you have a special project in mind, you can definitely have repetitions of these images. And the background of this has the little snowmen and little snow globes. Super sweet. This one has a blue stripe with a little hint of gold in the thinnest stripe there. This is Fairytale Christmas Basics B. The back of that has the polka dot of cream on blue, and they always have a little stripe at the bottom so that you don't waste it. Fairytale Christmas Basics E has the postage stamp, and then each postage stamp has, whether it be the little nutcracker, all of the fairies I've shown you already, and also the little snowman or the little soldier. And this one also includes the little girl hugging the bunny, which is super cute. The back of that is a pink gingham with a little orange stripe. Fairytale Christmas Basics C, and I may have these out of order, and that's because I was already looking at them, but this one has the darling little fairies, also the little girl hugging the bunny, and the other little girl, yeah, that's also a fairy, hugging the little owl. So cute. The back of that has a blue gingham with a peachy pink stripe at the bottom. This is Fairytale Christmas Basics D as in David. That's pink stripes all throughout. And then this one has a cream on pink polka dot with a very light peach stripe at the bottom. And then Fairytale Christmas Basics F as in Frank has the blue check here, or plaid I should call that, with a gorgeous snowflake background. I absolutely love this paper. I think it's so beautiful. And then of course it repeats itself. So I will be sharing a project with you today that you can follow along to if you wish to do so. But don't forget, if you're new to Paper Rose, I do invite you to subscribe not only to their YouTube channel, but then follow along on Facebook. There's a community page where you can share what you are making with these beautiful collections and inspire the group as well. So we look forward to seeing what you're making, and stick around. We'll craft together with these items today. Okay, I am back, and what I have here is that I've gone ahead and cut out the two smaller snowflakes that are in this set, and I did cut the smallest one out twice. And I wanted to show you here how darling they look. They're very, very delicate, so please be careful when you cut them. But I did cut them out of a nice thick pearlescent cardstock, and I had to be very, very careful removing them from the background paper. But you can just take your time if you're going to use thicker papers. And what you see here is, if you notice the reflection, I took some holographic cardstock, I placed it behind the snowflakes, and I only adhered the little portion there in the center, and then I cut around that little hexagon shape, so that way I could have the background there be really pretty. And I did the same thing with the larger one. Of course, the shape is more of a flower there, but I think it's really fun to do this because you can keep cutting the die over and over again out of whichever pretty papers you like, and then adhere them to that background. So say you don't want to use holographic paper, you can certainly use vellum. You can use any other papers that you like that you think are winter themed, and then go ahead and adhere the different colors on the inside there, and I think that would be precious, of course. Now the other thing I've done is I've cut down some of the papers that look like this, the little cut aparts. So you determine how you want to use them, of course, but I've gone ahead and cut those down. And what I did is that I have them here on a dish, so I'm going to show you really quickly. I have them all collected here. I like to use a dish for the items that I'm going to incorporate into my projects. I cut them all down, and I just did a little session of shabbying the edges. And the little tags, as you see there, I also added little eyelets, yes. So I added the little eyelets, And then on this one in particular here, what I did is that I do have a die that cuts out these little circles, and they are cut out of that holographic paper. So what I did is I added that first and then did the little eyelet in the center there, and that's just to add a little bit of shine. So you can always do that. Use what you have and then add more little elements to your cut aparts. For instance, some of these, what I've done is I've really shabbied them up with a tracing wheel. So if you know anything about sewing, you can use a tracing wheel to add texture to your die cuts. And that's what I've done to some of these. This one I backed up, for instance, with really thick, heavy cardstock. That's 300 GSM. And then all of the other ones have texture on the edges, and they're just shabbied up really pretty because that's the look that I'm going for with this project. And it doesn't matter how small they are, and all you do is use the edge of your scissors. That's it. You just run them through the edge of the paper. Now be really careful when you're doing it, because sometimes inevitably, as I did here, you may tear the paper. So what I did with this one is, because I still wanted to use it, is that I just adhered it onto 300 GSM cardstock, and as you can see there, you do see some stitching on that, and that's because I ran that tracing wheel over that paper to give it lots of texture. And these are just so darling. They're so cute. The other thing is that I cut out these little cookies, for instance, from the background. So just because they come as you see here, it doesn't mean that you can't cut that element out of that background. For instance, if you just wanted to use the snow globe, or just the little tree, just the little candy cane, etc., then you can always do that. So that's what I did here. For this project, we're going to be using a stylus, so something with a nice pointy end, as you see here, and also a good pair of sharp scissors. That's how you can tatter the edges of your paper, or just cut the paper, of course, into the size you need. Some good sticky double-sided adhesive, and also some foam adhesive. In this case, I'm using 1/8 of an inch thick, and that's going to come in handy. I'm also using a mix of sequins that I created using different colors that I happen to have, and that's to match the papers, of course. And along with that, I have some acetate, because we're creating a shaker front to a mini album. I love doing that, so I figured I should use what I have. So I do have a die set that will cut these papers into the shapes that I need. And for instance, here I created a little frame, and I'm also using that pearlescent cardstock because I thought it looked really pretty with this gorgeous collection from Paper Rose. And as you see here, I've cut out these elements and lots of matting layers, because I think the paper looks so darling that you don't need to do a whole lot to it. So what I've done here is I've created some pages, as you can tell, and I'm going to show you how to make the cover first. I think it's a lot of fun, but look at how darling that is. Oh, I just thought this paper was so cute. Could not pass up on it. And it's the kind of paper that you can definitely use over and over again, because it's just so sweet. So what I'm going to do here is I have my base page. This is going to be the cover of this really simple book, by the way. And then I just happen to have the little edge here that creates this gorgeous little side to the page so that I can bind it any way that I like. I can use ribbon on there or anything at all. If you don't happen to have that sort of thing, by the way, you can definitely get tools that will cut your paper like this. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll be more than happy to let you know where you can get them. So, okay, so I'm just gonna add this matting layer, and I hate to cover up the beautiful paper, but you always have to make a choice as to which one it is that you're going to use in your project. So let's start here, and I'm going to simply add this as my matting layer here on the cover. I'm going to adhere this frame onto this piece of acetate. Now what I've done is place double-sided adhesive behind it, and that's where the little stylus comes in handy. And one tip I can give you if you're new to creating shakers is always pick an adhesive that is fully going to cover the back of your aperture, okay? In this case, this is 1/4 inch wide double-sided adhesive, and you can get it in a roll like this, okay? nice and strong. And then be sure to cut it if there is any angle at all. Don't try to fold the tape, just cut it. Now this particular acetate is also nice and thick, so it does come with a covering. I'm going to take that off, and that protects the acetate, of course, from getting scratched. I'm going to place this right on top, and it should be the same size. Paper does stretch when you cut it, however, so if you see that it's a little bit larger than what you anticipated, just cut the edge off of the acetate if you need to. Okay, so I'm going to apply that, burnish that really nicely. And then I'm going to remove the protective covering on the other side. And then following the edge, not of the acetate, but of the paper, I'm going to apply the foam adhesive onto this. And I'm going to go corner to corner here. You can always cut away any excess. And again, you're following the angles as much as possible. I have my little aperture ready to go, and on here I'm going to place my sequin mix that I had created. And of course you use whatever materials you prefer. You can do little seed beads. I have some here that are in silver. I have silver hearts, and then a bunch of little sequin colors that I thought would look cute on here. As you can tell, I'm gathering them toward the center on purpose so that they don't compete with the adhesive that I'm going to be adding on here. And to avoid any static, I'm going to take an anti-static tool and apply some, this is pretty much cornstarch, along the edge here, all the way around. Little lining. Okay, and I am going to add little tiny drops of liquid adhesive to this as well, but just a little bit, so that it creates a nice bond. And now I can make sure that I cover this up from one edge. To the other. And the key there is to be patient, of course. Okay, I like to recycle, so I have some really, really lightweight foam, but it is about 1/8 of an inch thick, if you see there. And I'm actually going to apply the image to this before I place it on the cover. And that's going to allow this to have even more dimension. And I just traced it. So I'm going to now apply this here, and it will adhere to the acetate just fine, in case you're wondering, because I'm using really good adhesive. And I'm going to apply this right down here, kind of toward the corner, so you see that there is a shaker there, but the little image stands out. I just think she's so pretty. And then the reason being is that I am going to add these snowflakes here. Is adhere this only on the outer edge here. I don't want to add too much adhesive to this. So that snowflake's going to be there. Whoopsie. And it's okay if it overlaps because there's some dimension there. I'm avoiding adding too much adhesive to this little corner. And I'm just going to add it here. There also. Oh yeah, I like that. Okay. Oh my gosh, I love this already. Okay, so we have our cover. I have this called Glitter Snow, and I really like it. I think it's super cute, and I tend to use it on my 3D projects, but I think I might use it here. I'm going to use a little applicator that I have here, and I'm going to pick some of this up, and I'm going to add it to those little edges here so that it has a bit of snow, and this does have a little bit of sparkle on it also, and it's definitely, as it's called, glitter snow, and that's what I'm going to add to create a little bit of a wintry scene here onto this paper. And this will be, it'll dry dimensional, so however much you want to add is, you know, you do it as you're comfortable. It doesn't have to be a lot, of course, but I just think a little wintry snowfall here is going to look super cute. So I'm also going to add some chunky glitter. This is actually called glass glitter, and I love using it on wintry projects. So here I go. This is something that you don't want to get anywhere near children, by the way. To make this page into a pocket, what I've done is that I've cut a second one, and I've cut away the edge that I don't need. So it's just a duplicate of that. I'm going to actually go ahead and cut this in half, however. So this is 4 3/4 inches tall, and I'm going to cut this down to 2 3/8 inches tall, approximately, is what I can cut this down to for it to be half. The little image, I'm going to do the same thing and cut this in half. So now I have this. What I'm going to do is adhere the top portion to the base that I had created already. This way nothing is lost. I'll have my little pocket that is the same exact size as my base page here. Simply going to apply adhesive all the way around the perimeter, very close to the edge. You don't need a lot. I'm going to match up these edges really nicely. And I'm now going to apply the second half. And in here, of course, I can place the little tags that I like, any little cut aparts that you want to add in here, you can now fit. And these can be little journaling spots. It depends on how you want to use it, of course. But I think it looks super darling. And then I'll go ahead and add a little ribbon. You can add a little piece of ribbon or lace It's up to you how you want to finish that, but I think that looks super darling, and it's such an easy way to create a little pocket on a page. For the next page we're making, we're going to be using these tags. This is the Stitched Tags metal die. As you can tell, it comes with 4 different sizes. We'll be using the smaller 2. And what I've done is that using the paper collection, there are those small cut-aparts. I've cut one of them with those beautiful little hanging baubles out of that paper using the small tag, and then I did use holographic paper to cut out some reinforcers that come with that collection as well. One of these is going to have this little bird, and I'll be adhering that shortly, but the other part of that image was the little girl, the fairy, holding the little holly and berries. So she's going to be on this page. However, I've also cut out 2 decorative layers. So these are the matting layers for this page. The one with the pretty bells is from the 6x6 collection, and then this one's from the 12x12 collection. So you can see what the back of that would look like. So alternately, of course, you can use these instead of the ones that I've selected. The other thing I've done is using the larger of the 2 tags there, is I've cut one and I've folded it. So I did score that fold line, and then I cut another that's going to go behind it. This is going to hide one of our magnets. I've also cut out a piece of, this is seam binding. So I thought it was pretty because it's crinkly. And then from the cut-aparts, I've also cut out the strip that has the little snowflakes, and all I did was tatter that as well on the edges, and I did cut out a matching strip of 300 GSM card. This is actually going to fit around our little tag. It's going to help create a closure, and I've already folded it so that it'll fit around just like that. And the 300 GSM card strip is just to help reinforce this so that it doesn't fall apart. So what I'm going to do is adhere this first. I'm starting here, and I've tattered this quite a bit, but you don't have to. This is just, again, personal preference. So I'm just going to apply a little bead of adhesive here, and this is going to go on that strip of cardstock. Now the foundation page is the same as all of the other ones. I'm going to be adding this color here as a matting layer. That's pearlescent paper that I happen to have. It's one of my favorites, and this is going to go right on top. And then this is going to create a page that will open. In order to do so, we do need a hinge. I've cut one to fit the edge here of my page. The folding portion has to face the edge, however. And it should be the same height here. If you need to cut it a little bit smaller, you can. And I just cut it at a 45-degree angle. And this is a 1-inch piece of card folded in half. So each little edge here is 1/2 inch wide, just to make it nice and sturdy. And then I happen to have these little die cuts here. You can use whichever shape you have, just something small. That's going to be for the ribbon, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the first thing that I want to do here is adhere this matting layer, and it'll all make sense in a minute. I'm going to have on one end this tab here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is adhere this first, and just fold that over the back. Make sure it's equidistant there, top to bottom. Simple enough. I can adhere the magnet here first. That way I know exactly where the placement's going to be. So we can start there. And we want to hide that, of course. I'm going to be adding this to hide that magnet with this pretty side up. However, I do have my little strip here that I also want to add to this, and I'm going to do that now because I'm going to be hiding those little tail ends underneath that paper. And you can, of course, cut this down whichever way you like. But I'm going to add this here, just like that. And here I'm going to be quite generous with the adhesive. And I'm going to hide that magnet there. And you want to make sure your die cut is smaller than the previous one, but you also want to make sure it doesn't impede the fold of that little hinge you created there. So make sure you measure that accordingly. The second magnet will go right there. As you can see, it jumps right on there. And I'm going to simply tack that down. And this entire thing is going to be the base of my page. Generous adhesive all along here, and the matting layer just around the edges there, and a little bit. I'm going to make sure that I place that appropriately there. I almost forgot, this is going to have another page on this end, so before that dries, oh goodness, I'm going to adhere this hinge on this side as I had mentioned, and my apologies, I craft faster than I think. This hinge goes on this end here, and if I have to add a little more adhesive to this, I can definitely do that. That's going to go right in here. So I'm actually going to also add adhesive to the top part of that. So there's quite a bit of glue here. But we want to hide that little hinge right behind that matting layer. Make sure it's nicely positioned there. There we go. Also adhered a piece of, this is seam binding. So it's a little bit bulky here, but that's okay. The seam binding is going to help close this page, and on the end of that I did adhere some little ovals that I could cut out of another die cut I happen to have, just to give that a little funny or cute little ending there. So on here what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the little tags. Use my crocodile, and I'm going to create a little hole in this page just for fun, and I'm just going to go in here on the corner, and that's where I'm going to add the little tags. You can add little hole reinforcers to that as well. But I want to do this, which is that I'm going to add the little tags here with the bird one facing the top. That there. Okay, now my little fairy is going to be adhered kind of at an angle here. You can only adhere to the little tag, and it has to be able to open and close. So this is going to be a little bit tricky here. However, I think I can manage it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add a little bit of foam adhesive behind her dress. I'm going to cut this a little bit small, just maybe a little square here. And I'm going to add it right behind her little dress here. And this is going to go on this little tag. I'm going to try to bring it as low as I can here, just like that. Okay. And she's going to be a little bit floating there, but that's the only way that this is going to be able to open and close with this. So I can go ahead and thread that right back out here. And it has to go behind the fairy, but that's okay. And then this is going to open like this and like this. So the photo can go in here, another one over here, and this opens all the way out like that. even though this one doesn't because the little fairy legs are kind of in the way, but that's okay. It doesn't have to open fully in order for this to be super cute. If that bothers you, then of course you can design this so that the tag opens from the top. That would have been a really great idea. Too bad I didn't think of it, but this is going to slide right behind this little strip of paper here that I had shown you. But it's going to close just like this. And it has some texture and it has some movement and of course the little tags there. And you can tie this quite, you know, whichever way you like. And she's not going to impede this from moving up and down because it's not adhered on that edge. So if you want to move that up a little bit more, you can. But this completes this page. It's just meant to be playful, of course. So this is the third page in our book. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to be adhering papers to the background of these pages. I'm just going to keep those quite simple, however. To create the next page, I've taken 3 of the little cut-aparts and framed them with white cardstock. And I've also frayed the edges, tattered them, and what I've done is I'm wanting to use this stocking as a center point of this page. So I did create a larger border around that one, whereas the other 2 are just quite thin there. And I did cut out a strip of vellum and also a matting layer. And this is from the 6x6 paper collection. So the back of that has the little cut-aparts. I've decided to go with the paper that has the presents. And this is going to adhere to the back of this along the sides. And as you can tell, I've also tattered the edges of this vellum. I think vellum is a lot of fun to use. In fact, I think I might use it one more time in this book. So what I'm going to do here is super easy. Just fold this along the edges. No need to measure anything. Just cut a strip that looks good to you for the size of page that you're using. And it's as simple as adhering that then to the back. Now, moisture will make vellum curl, so be aware of that whenever you're adding adhesive. And I'm going to adhere this edge and here. This is going to adhere to this background fully. Just also remember when you're using directional paper to be mindful of that if you are going to be die cutting it in any way. So I'm going to adhere that to the background, and now this creates that little belly band. And what I'm going to do is adhere the stocking in the center. However, I want to incorporate that cute little owl and also the little soldier. So these are going to be a little more topsy-turvy, just so that there's room here, like so. Gonna add that one here. The little owl on the other end. A super easy page. And then this is going to go right on top. And I don't want to cover the soldier too much, but I'll still be able to see it. And what I'm going to do is add some foam adhesive here in the center. And it's not very much, as you can tell, but just enough to allow the height here because of the thickness of that paper. And then on the edges I'll add a little adhesive, and that should fit perfectly here. Okay, I decided to create a little envelope to fit inside of this little belly band. So I'm going to take this gorgeous paper, I'm going to cut it down to 5 7/8 inches square, because I'm actually going to use a little punch board that I have. And I guess I want to go in this direction. It says if I create a 5 7/8 inch paper that I can then score it at 3 1/8 using this board, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to place the paper corner to 3 1/8 and use the attached little score tool here to score the line. Then all you have to do is flip this so that the score line meets this little arrow here. So you're going to notice this is going to be different, but you don't have to have any regard for that at this point because you've already created your score line. So now you're going to score again. Well, you still have the paper there. Flip it over again, and then meet your score line one more time. So in this case, it is going to be 3 1/8, and that's in inches. But then you score it again, and then you flip again, meet your little pointer here, punch the paper and score one more time, and this is going to be the 4th side of your little envelope. And you can now take this and pull the crease lines. Now this tool also allows you to cut one of the little ends here of the paper, the little pointy parts of this, if you don't like it. So if you'd like to, I like the envelope to look like this. I do like to burnish that really nicely. But another thing you can do here is then place the paper on this end, and this will give you a nice little rounded edge there. So you can do that on both. And that's just for a cute little finish there. Of course, you can further embellish this. I think I might just do that. So I can do this. And of course, this is all just meant to be very whimsical. That's the look that I'm going for here. And I have a habit of going too fast when I craft, but I'm going to just tatter these edges first. And you can tell sometimes they get really very cut up there, but that's the whole idea there. Just tatter them, and I use whichever scissors I have on hand. Once I have that done, I can adhere this onto a piece of white cardstock to make sure that it's nice and sturdy, and also to give myself an edge there. I'll take the same scissors and cut this a little bit wider than the paper, and tatter this as well. Can be a little more aggressive with the scissors because this is thicker card. Now this is going to go right on here to help close this little envelope. However, I want the little cookies on top, and I do want these to stand out. Pick up the little cookies with another piece of white card because I want to give this a little bit of a border to help it stand out from the background. I think that's enough actually. So it's up to you whether you want to tatter the edges or not. It might be a little more difficult when the paper is this angled, so you can just do every other angle if you want to, or just use the very tip of your scissors. If you're new to crafting, be very careful with this step because yes, you can cut yourself. After all, these are cutting tools, so I don't advise that this is something you do if you've not paper crafted before. And I know that sounds very as if it's more dangerous than it looks, but I'm going to be really honest. These are very, very sharp scissors, so if you happen to have scissors such as these, be really careful because you can cut yourself. I'm going to adhere this first, and only on the two opposite edges here, very close to that edge. So that way this can create that little closure, being mindful of the distance and also the fact that this paper has that little decoration there. And then on top of that, I will add the little cookies. Just think it looks so cute. Place that right there in the center. Will now help me decorate this page, and I'll insert it here. And of course, if you'd like to, you can add more little envelopes in the same fashion, create them in different sizes using these beautiful decorative papers. And now we can move on to the next page. Okay, here one thing I wanted to show you is one thing you can do with dies such as these is cut them out of a background piece of card. You would want to make sure it's nice and thick. In this case it is 300 GSM card, so it's what I use for the base of my mini albums. And once you have that shape, you can use that as a stencil. And what I'm going to do is, I've got this ink here. I've not even tried it, but it is an Opal Blush Shimmer ink. It's a dye pigment ink that's called Interference because it will change if you add droplets of water, which I thought was kind of cool. But I want to use it very lightly here. So I'm just going to pick some up with a brush. And I'm not quite sure what the color will look like, but I figured I could give this a try. And I'm going to actually pounce this here using this shape. Now you may want to tape off any edges that might actually accidentally give you an edge on your background as well. For instance, I just got some there with my finger, but I'm going to try to cover that up. And I'm just going to try to very gently color this in. And just going to go around here. You can also cut it out of a larger piece of paper if you're not comfortable using a small one. But once you've done that, you can remove your stencil, and there is the colored image. Now of course I got a little bit too much ink on here, but what I'm going to try to do is work that into this by moving the stencil and using it again. And of course you don't want to stick your fingers in the ink, and that's what I accidentally did. But I'm going to revisit that with some water. Okay, so I've got that second one, and I think I'll do one more. I don't need too many. I'm just going to try to do this as softly as I can here. You may want to use a smaller brush, little areas in fact. That's what I should have done to begin with. But you can do this and just pounce that ink into those tiny little spaces and make it a whole lot easier. And then you have your little image there. So of course I could revisit some of that, or just do some little blending here on the background. What I would like to do is to take a little bit of water, just allow this to have some droplets on it, and I'm being very gentle here with the water, just kind of letting it drop with my fingers here, as you can tell, so that way I get that interference that I was talking about. And I can wet my brush as well, and then revisit that one little area that I thought was too dark. And it's okay if it bleeds a little bit. I'm okay with that. So it's going to create even more of a little shadow here and there. More of a watercolor effect. which I think can be quite pretty. And then revisit those little areas that accidentally got ink on them. And I can also take this, bring it up there, and use the little bit of ink that's on there. Okay, so nothing is lost. I've got my little patterns on here, and then I can let this dry. I also have this little mica spray, sorry, and it's quite old. This has been in my stash for far too long, in fact, but I do have a little bit of this left, and I'm going to go ahead and use it because it does have some pink, and as you can tell, I just spilled it there. So I will be using that on a separate piece of paper, but what I'm going to do is just splatter this, and in fact, I think I'm going to use it on the cover also. But what I want to do is that I get quite messy when I craft sometimes. It happens. Use a paintbrush, and I'm going to just flicker this, or whatever word I'm supposed to use. Splatter. I'm going to splatter this with the remaining portion that I dropped here on my table, and it's going to get on the acetate. I'm not worried about that. I think shine with shine is fine. Shine with shine. I'm going to do the same over here because this is the other page that I'm going to be using. So it's going to have this paper as a matting layer, so I'm simply going to place this here, and I'm going to do the same thing and just splatter this here and there. And it's very subtle, but it is visible when the light hits it. My next step on this page is that I'm actually going to take the same snowflake die, and I cut it in holographic paper. I then cut away the outer little portions of the snowflake. As you can see here, this one I've gone ahead and cut it out of that holographic paper and use those interior portions to decorate that one. I also adhered that onto a piece of vellum, which is why it appears as if it's just floating in there. But I'm going to be using this for this piece of paper that I colored with that aperture created by the same snowflake. And what I've done is that these little portions that I cut smaller, as you can see, it would have been that part of the snowflake, then I'm going to layer on top of the ones that I inked. I should just keep playing with it and just come up with something a little different. So I am going to alter this a little bit here. I'm not going to adhere it exactly to match, and you have to be careful when you're cutting these out. Just be patient as you're cutting the papers, and use some really sharp scissors if you're taking away any portions of it. That way you get some pretty results. So again, I'm going to alternate this rather than matching it up as it normally would have been. And as you can tell, I don't adhere, or I don't place adhesive on all surfaces of my die cuts, because when you're using good adhesive, you don't have to do that. That a few times just to make sure. But because I use that holographic paper also to adorn that, it gives me a little more surface area onto which I can apply the adhesive. So I'm going to adhere this one here. I'm trying to double check there, with that portion facing in, like so. And this is quite delicate. However, I did cut it out of 300 GSM card, then the holographic, and then the vellum. I'm going to repeat that on the back. However, I'm first going to match up this matting layer so that it's nice and finished. So I'm going to apply this here to match up the second one right on top. And then this should, even though there is some space in between there, I'm going to be able to adhere those two together. So I'm going to place the adhesive here on the bottom one, all the way around, and then on the other half of this that will face the paper, or the base, the matting layer there. Okay, I'm going to use tweezers just to be more careful, and then I'm going to line these up as careful as I can, and they are a mirror image, so it's going to match perfectly. You just have to be really careful with those little delicate swirls there, but you can manipulate paper quite a bit. There we go. And then the other edge already has adhesive on it. In my case, I did use an Aqua Flow pen. This is called Glitter Gloss, and it is clear and it does dry shiny. If that's not an option for you, then my suggestion is that, so that you know that it's nice and clean, that you cut out the same image again and then adhere that one right on top. So this would be your first layer, and then you'd have yet another snowflake on top. Not only would that make it really nice and sturdy, but then you'd get that nice clean finish, especially if you're using white paper, because as you can see, my hands are riddled with medium here. But it's just a suggestion, of course. But here it is, nice and finished, super pretty. And this is going to now be able to be an insert on this page first. It's going to be a super simple page because all of the hard work was done on that insert. But that's just to show you how you can use your dies to create a very customized look on your crafts. That I can add some strips of paper here to create some lift. It's going to be just enough for me to add on that edge. So this is in lieu of foam that you can do this. Just add some strips to create height on that page. And this is not going to be seen. This is simply to fit right back here. So in fact, I'm going to cut it a little bit shorter. And that's going to go there. So I'm going to adhere this to the very edge of this piece here. All the way to the end, here this edge, all the way to the outermost edge here. So I'm not going to cover the entire thing with adhesive either. Bring her all the way over here and place her down. I decided how it is that I'm going to use this insert, and that's going to be vertically. Now, I think it makes more sense for a couple reasons. This way the snowflakes are falling down. The other reason is that I can then have this little photo corner to hold it in place rather than relying on it fitting this way, which I wasn't liking too much. Now, I did not apply adhesive all the way to the corner here, but if you happen to have a tool such as a metal spatula in your craft room, if you don't, get one. Because you can always lift the paper as much as you need to by inserting a spatula like that, in case you forget to adhere anything. I do that all the time. And I happen to have this little corner piece. I'm going to use this. This is meant to be a photo corner, but you can definitely use it to also hold your papers. So I'm going to attach this by placing it right under this little curve, and I'm going to be careful here because it has to go behind that matting layer. So again, this is going to adhere right under there, and I'm going to lift this up a little bit or pull it back and apply more adhesive back there so that it all attaches really nicely. That's going to be my little pocket there. Okay, now this will fit right in here, and it has a little landing place there, and that looks really adorable. And it doesn't matter if it has a different little element there in that corner, because I cut it out of white paper. It's not really going to call too much attention to that corner, but this is the result of this. I really love this page. I think they're so adorable. This page, I decided that I'm going to do a little bit of a fold out page. I've created one hinge for this matting layer, another hinge for this one, and what I'm going to do is simply adhere this on one end here, and I've shaped it to fit the size of the page, so that's really important. And then also I've folded that with the fold facing the outer edge of that matting layer there. So you're going to place your adhesive there. This is going to adhere onto this matting layer here. So if you see any portion of that sticking out, by all means, take your scissors and you can cut whichever piece you need to cut away there. And it need not be 100% perfect, but in any case, this is going to adhere onto this portion here. Just be mindful of the fact that it's going to create a little bit of an edge because of the overlap, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to adhere this right behind that one. Okay, and then on this opposite edge, I'm simply going to place the second hinge here. This is also going to have that fold line facing the outer edge. And this one I've tried to be a little bit neater about because of the fact that it's going to adhere to this base. Apply adhesive to this hinge alone, not this one, just that one there. That's going to face the inner edge of this page. So I want to make sure that this is very nice and neat here. So I do have to lift it up so I can see it. I'm going to apply pressure there with a paper creaser. And I'm going to open this and apply pressure here. So this is going to open like this. Now here it's important that I do apply another layer. So I'm going to place my little magnet right here. Double-sided adhesive. I will attach it to the page like so. I'm going to apply these on the top, just like that. I'm going to maybe the other way, like this. Yep, like this. Topsy-turvy, as I had said before. And this one here. Just going to be this one here. On top of everything else. And then this little guy, it's going to help a little bit. And this is going to apply the height to this, but it's also going to help cushion that little bit of metal there that's on that page. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm actually going to apply the second magnet behind all of those right there, and cover that with double-sided adhesive as well. And that had some old adhesive on there, so it's oxidized and it looks horrible, but we can still use it, and it's going to be covered by another piece that matches the actual base page. So it's the same exact size as the page. I just cut away the edge that I knew I did not need. And I'm going to match it up with this base all the way around. This got a bit of that spray that I had used earlier, but I think it looks quite pretty anyway, because I did that to make everything have a little bit of glimmer on it. So I might splatter some more on there, in fact. I'm just going to cover this here. Okay. So this is going to cover those hinges really nicely all the way around. Such beautiful paper. And I want to make sure that it's in the right position here. I have just about a second to fix any oopsies there, but there we go. I'm going to also reinforce that fold because it's going to create bulk here. Okay, so that's going to go just like that. Super cute. And then of course it's nice and clean on the back. I had this piece here that I wanted to add. Maybe I'll add it right on top. Yeah, I think I'll do that. So I'm going to add this little wooden piece also right here. And this is just out of my stash of items that I have to craft with. I like to just add cute little things to my pages whenever possible, and it's still going to show everything else. So it's just a nice chunky page. And on top of that, I was thinking that I would add maybe a sequin, add some sequins to this little tree, and I'm going to be stacking them, but what I'm going to do is that I'm going to apply adhesive, because this is made of basically chip, like almost like chipboard, but it's actually probably balsa wood if I had to guess. Then I'm able to add adhesive to it, and to that I can add little sequins if I'd like. Oops, I just have to make sure they're facing the right way, and they always flip on me. Okay, so I'm gonna add a blue one, and then over here a white one, the same size. Super cute. And place those there. Pretty. So in lieu of more bling, I'm going to simply add some Nouveau drops here. These are white, and they're just going to go in the centers there, and then a little bit here and there, just to keep adding more texture. So that completes our very last page. So this completes this little mini album. I've had so much fun crafting with these supplies from Paper Rose. I will have a separate tutorial for the spine because if not, this video would be entirely too long. And I just wanted to share with you that each of these pages was so much fun to do. I added little elements such as ribbons, sequins, beads, paper clips, just anything that I had in my stash that I thought would work. I definitely enjoyed adding a lot of glitter to the little wings and sequins as well. So that way each one could have a little bit of personality. I added little gems that I thought would match the paper collection and some shine. This one got seed beads also, and a little heart in the center of that snowflake, as well as the little sequins back here, little nouveau drops. And on the front, I also topped off her wings with a lot of sequins there. I gave some shine to her little headband and added little beads and also a heart to the snowflakes because I thought that would just give it a really sweet touch there. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. Please leave a comment below. Remember, if you're new to this channel, to also subscribe and also join the community group for Paper Rose over at Facebook so that you can share what you make. So I look forward to seeing what you guys think of this project. I hope that you can be inspired and be blessed, and I thank you so much for watching.